Welcome to the Dr. Truth Show. It is July 25th, 2023, and we're going through a lot right now with this hot summer. And of course, there's been enormous uptick in health concerns because of the forest fires in North America and in Europe. And of course, the heat wave, which is more related to the sun's activity than anything else. As right now, we're in solar cycle 25, and the sun is generating a number of flares and coronal mass ejections, which are basically plasma explosions from the sun's surface that energize our planet and the rest of the planets in the solar system. So the story is not entirely based on anthropomorphic change, which is related to, of course, climate change. In today's episode, we are going to talk a little bit about anti-aging or undoing aging. And I think we're going to just briefly touch on a couple of biohacks that I think are important. And I think that we've gotten to the point where we can understand some of the mechanisms that are involved for using some of the medication that I'll describe. And I think the general public is now learning more about how to assess what is important from a nutraceutical standpoint and what's important for energy production and immune system enhancement. As we've left COVID and now we're a couple of years out, people are still concerned about maintaining good health, and I think that's a great thing. So let me just get into one of the important aspects of maintaining health, and that is increasing energy. As we age, we lose our ability to produce energy, which is ATP on a cellular level, adenosine triphosphate, and that is the currency of what the body uses to produce energy. So if we lose that ability to manufacture ATP as we age, we're going to lose our ability to generate energy and maintain vital systems, including our immune system, which is incredibly important, obviously the most important thing to maintaining our homeostasis. So one of the things that has come about in the last 4 or 5 years is a medication called metformin, which is glucophage, brand-wise. So metformin is the generic, and it is a oral hypoglycemic. It's prescribed typically to diabetics, and it's a medication that's been used for a very long time, probably over 20 years, maybe 30 years now, in the treatment of diabetes. But interestingly enough, it is now being used by some of the general public to reverse some of the damage caused by aging. And there is some evidence that shows that it can be utilized to slow the aging process and extend the health span of a human. And part of that is the pathway that it affects in some of the cellular function that causes some change in the way that inflammation is generated. There's inflammation going on from making that energy, as I described. It's called oxidative stress. And that oxidative stress is almost akin to what happens to steel when you leave it outside in the rain and the weather. It becomes rusted. That's oxidative change. It's basically the same kind of theory that goes on in the body. Oxidative stress is inflammation. Inflammation causes disease. And of course, that then causes other problems. And aging is related to that. So how do we really approach aging? I think there's a variety of different aspects, but one of the important things now is trying to find drugs that reverse senescence or reverse the damage caused by aging cells. And as we age, of course, Our genetics dictate some of the diseases that we'll inherit, and of course our environment. So one of the aspects of what I think is important about medicine is herbs. And almost all of our medicines come from herbs or plant-based derivatives that over time we've determined help affect the body. Metformin does come from a traditional herbal medicine understanding. It is a European-based medication, and it's from goat's rue, Galeggia officinalis. That's the actual term. But it's been used for centuries to treat a variety of issues, particularly with the digestive system and diabetes. Guanidine is the active component, and that was shown in the early 1900s to reduce or lower blood sugar and glucose levels. That then in turn was important for diabetic treatment. So anyway, the quote-unquote off-label use of metformin is now something that people are looking at, and that is more or less related to one of the pathways that I was mentioning, and that was it's the FOXO pathway. We don't need to really get into the details of that, but suffice it to say that it has an ability to reduce inflammation and also reduce the amount of sugar, glucose in the blood at any one time, and that also reduces inflammation. So it's something to think about. I'm not advising people to go and take it. There are some side effects to using it, but it's something to think about, and that's both for men and women. The next thing I would probably mention is that anything you can do to reduce your weight, caloric restriction essentially is what that's termed, will reduce aging. Anytime you eat more calories than you are expelling, you're going to put weight on, and that consumes what's called in-organ reserve. The more weight you have, the more blood vessels are needed to supply oxygen to that new tissue. The more enzymes and products need to be made by organs to supply those tissues with vital substances. So as you can imagine, the more weight you carry, the more body requirements are needed to maintain that weight or that fat, those tissues. And that's storage of energy. And if you're not using that energy, everything goes into fat. And that's why we want that weight to be reduced. And that in turn reduces the amount of body requirement needed over time. So inflammation goes down. Of course, aging process would in turn be reversed on some level. So those things go hand in hand. So it's just important to realize there are things coming onto the horizon. There's a conference each year that I attend called Undoing Aging. It's typically in Berlin. And in that particular conference, there's a number of things that are discussed. And of course, the understanding of what the aging process really relates to and how it can be potentially reversed is important. But metformin definitely is one of those things that I think is going to become more and more popular. It's a very cheap drug. It does target specific areas that are actually important for decreasing inflammation, increasing genetic stability, and improving mitochondrial production of energy. The exact dose and how to work out how often to take it is something that yet has not been fully described, but I think over time we'll learn that. But the idea that we're going to be able to use medications to help reduce the aging process over time is exciting. And I think the advancement in artificial intelligence and being able to plug people in to an algorithm, which I've been working on for a while, called WellScore. Eventually, I would like to have WellScore be an avatar of the person in relation to where they're at now, and then work out through proprietary mathematics and heat theorem understanding of those important things that we would want to improve upon for that person individually to move them into an avatar that's more healthy, and they can actually see that and understand what they need to do. Essentially creating a recipe or instruction manual for yourself to understand what's best for the amount of vitamin C or vitamin D or metformin or whatever else that we're giving you. And then being able to monitor that, managing that information is highly important. So blood tests, of course, and assessing weight and our ability to understand what's going on genetically, all of that has to be compiled into some format where you can understand it and be able to compare it to previous changes that we can exemplify and try to refine for yourself as you go through the aging process over the years. So one other thing I'd like to talk about is, of course, we're all very sensitive to pandemics and health-related global concerns now. And of course, there's cases of MERS, Middle East respiratory virus syndrome, that is now revealed apparently in the Emirates, a case or two of people now being hospitalized with MERS, which is similar to COVID. It's very similar to SARS. It's much more lethal, and it's around 35% fatal if one has contracted it. It's much more aggressive, but it does affect the lungs. So it's something to understand. I think that we're going to continue to see COVID, and we are seeing COVID, and COVID is still going on. It's just evolving into more or less a cold and a flu-like syndrome. But without question, we're going to see that evolve, and it could get into a place where it becomes more lethal or more aggressive, just as it is subsided into something less. So I think that's important just to understand that improving your immune system, doing the things you need to do to be more vigilant about your health, reducing your bioburden, taking good care of your immune system, taking your vitamin C, 3,000 milligrams a day, vitamin D, 4,000 international units a day, Andrographis paniculatus, which is an herb that boosts your T lymphocyte system, which fights viruses, staying active, being outside, breathing fresh air, obviously doing the things that you know are common sense. It's very important, reducing your exposure to nicotine, tobacco smoke, marijuana smoke, alcohol, or any of that is going to improve your immune system regardless. And with that being said, I think that we're going to try to continue these podcasts on a more regular basis. I've been traveling a bit, been out of the country, and now can focus, I think, this next year or so. We're really going to try to refine a few of the things that we're doing in the clinic. My second book is almost finished. I'm just going through the final edits, so that's going to be interesting, and that's going to be more or less a compendium of what I'm doing now. It explains much more of what I'm trying to do in my clinic from a very high level, and then also I provide some instructions and recipes in the book to try to help people live longer and better. So with that being said, I sign off, and I wish everyone a great week. Have a nice rest of your day, and goodbye.